I would now like to call the July 20th, 2022 Longmont Sustainability Advisory Board meeting to order. Can we please start with a roll call?
Yes, Kate Collardson.
Present.
Jim Metcalf.
Here.
Mary Lynn.
Present.
Michelle Mendieta Roth.
Yeah.
Charles Musgrave.
Present.
Robert Davidson.
Here.
And Ralph Grosswald.
Present.
Lisa Knobloch.
Here.
Francie Jaffe.
Here.
Debbie Seidman.
Here.
And Heather McIntyre. Becky Doyle and Daryl Hahn will be joining us shortly. They're in the middle of another meeting, but and then Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Thank you. Chair, you have a quorum.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'll read our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that Longmont sits on the traditional territory of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Ute, and other indigenous peoples. We honor the history and the living and spiritual connection that the first peoples have with this land. It is our commitment to face the injustices that have happened when the land was taken and to educate our communities, ourselves, and our children to ensure that these injustices do not happen again. So we have some new faces. Welcome. I would love to give folks, the new folks, just a couple minutes. Could you introduce yourselves? And I think we'll start with Ralph.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be here. I've lived in Longmont for about 3 years, but have been coming to this area since about 1978. Hiking and backpacking, have many friends here. My wife and I, our businesses are international, so we can be anywhere. So why not be in this beautiful place? I've been involved in community activity everywhere that I've lived. I've been a founding member of an environmental group in Watauga County, North Carolina. I've been involved in zoning issues, historic preservation, saving rivers. And on the other hand, I'm a businessman and have running 3 businesses myself right now. And so I'm experienced in balancing the interests of my tree hugging ways with the importance of a vital economic base as well. And excited to get to know you guys and be part of this.
Well, welcome, Ralph. Always excited to get another tree hugger in the group. Michelle.
Hi. That was a great intro, Ralph. So try and follow up. My name is Michelle. I am very excited to be joining the committee. So let's see. So I got my degree in environmental studies from University of Vermont. So since then, I've been making my career out of basically sustainability, kind of like people and planet, working both like environmental groups that are focused on, like both sustainability and preservation, but also the social justice side of it. So I was excited to join what Longmont's doing, because when I was also part of the Climate Action Task Force, and there were some great items going on there, and I was just excited to learn what Longmont was doing. So excited to be part of it. I'm currently, for the last year, I've been a stay-at-home mom. So I left my job. I was recently working at Global Green Grants Fund, where we were fundraising and giving out grants to social and environmental grassroots groups. So I'm excited to be using my skills and excitement for sustainability in the place that I live. I've been in Longmont for almost 5 years now, and in Colorado for 10. So I'm excited to be part of it.
Perfect. Thank you, Michelle. Welcome to the group. Welcome back to our returning board members. For the benefit of the new folks, I'd love it if we each did a little 1-minute intro for ourselves. Charles, do you mind starting?
Sure. Charles Musgrave. I've been on the advisory board for 2 years now, I think. And I'm a professor of chemical engineering at the University of Colorado. And one of my focus areas is on renewable energy.
Awesome. Thank you.
Happy
Mary.
Hi, my name is Mary Lynn, and I have a long background involved with environmental causes, both as an activist and as a founder of sustainability groups, a sustainable business network where I lived prior to this, Prescott, Arizona, marketing public relations for the world's first eco college, which is Prescott College. And now I'm very involved with advocacy for the local sustainable and regenerative farms movement. And I don't know, there's something about this board in Vermont. Lisa has a degree from Goddard. I have a degree from Goddard. I went to Marlborough College. I don't know, we might need to investigate this.
Sounds fishy.
I love Ben and Jerry's.
Hey, there you go.
I knew it.
Okay, Jim, since we're off mute.
Yeah. I'm Jim Metcalf. I'm a geologist. I work at the University of Colorado, so I'm a research scientist in the Department of Geological Sciences. And my background is largely in kind of things that aren't necessarily related, but through teaching and other experiences, I've become very interested in sustainability and specifically kind of what we're going to need for a sustainable future, what we're going to need to decarbonize our economy. And it's been really exciting. I moved to Longmont in 2014, and I think I was really pleasantly surprised at how, I think, well thought out and well put together the city's sustainability plan was. And it's just been exciting to kind of be part of this group. And I feel like I've learned a ton from everybody on it, both the other board members and the city staff. And I'm just glad to still be contributing, I hope.
Definitely are. Awesome. Thank you. And Robert.
Yeah, so Robert Davidson, this is now a year for me being on the advisory board. I work in the sustainability sector, doing energy performance contracting. So I spend my days trying to figure out how to help buildings be more efficient and use a little bit less energy. And it's been a lot of fun being part of the team here as well.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm Kate Collardson. I am perhaps the most tenured member of this board. And I'll be honest and say I don't know what that means as far as how long I've been serving on it, but a few years. I work in the solar industry. I'm very passionate about maintaining a habitable planet for future generations, and love the work that we do on this board. So welcome to new members. Council Member Martin, I'd love to give you a minute to introduce yourself.
Sure. I am Marcia Martin, the council liaison to this board, and I am a software engineer, former research fellow, and AMI design engineer. So specializing, in fact, on using AMI networks as an instrument for understanding the distribution grid and optimizing it rather than, just reading meters.
Perfect. Thanks. I'm going to stop our introductions there, not to say that anyone else who's on the meeting is any less important and should not introduce themselves, but in the interest of time, I think that I want to keep this rolling. So our next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which I did not attend and cannot speak to how accurate those minutes are. So anyone who was there, if we get a motion to approve those minutes.
Yeah, Adam did a good job leading that last meeting, and I'm happy to move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Awesome. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Fantastic. All in favor? I think I can vote there.
It's okay to vote. Yes.
Okay. All right. Motion is approved. So Heather, do we
Real
have
quick,
any?
wait, Kate,
Sorry.
before we move on, was that, I look like it was a 5-0-2 vote on that. Is that true?
There
the
were,
minutes?
let me, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us voted.
Okay, thank you.
Mary,
That's
what
what
do
I
you?
thought.
I'm getting a message, unstable system sources, so I may have to turn my video off if you guys freeze, so just a warning.
Thanks for the heads up. Okay. All good, Heather?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So there's no one to be heard, no one from the public to be heard.
We don't
Okay.
have anyone today.
Fantastic. So that takes us to agenda revisions and submissions of documents. Any revisions?
Yep.
Great.
So we might have plenty of time if you want to go back to the introductions later, Kate.
All right, cool.
So I apologize. I had a miscommunication with the natural resources folks on the pollinators presentation, and they are not able to be here today, but we rescheduled them for the October meeting. So I apologize for that. I thought I was waiting to hear from them. They thought they were waiting to hear from me. And then today came and here we are. So I'm sorry. And then we do have 2 items to add. Oh yeah, sorry, Mary Lynn, go ahead.
So I would love to spend some time as a board creating questions for them so that when they do present, we can get right into it with the things that we are most interested in around that issue. I guess should I ask that we make a motion? I don't know. Or do you have something else to fill the time?
I think we could devote a few minutes to putting together a few questions. What you said there were a couple of other items to add to the agenda, Lisa?
Yeah, but it's pretty brief. So there's just 2 items to add under the staff, items from staff around volunteer events and the stormwater bond questions.
Okay. What and water bonds?
Stormwater.
Stormwater. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
All right.
To hearing about Star Water.
Right? I was excited.
Right.
Okay.
That new telescope, man.
That's amazing. Okay. Thank you. Well, Lisa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. I did have a pleasure to meet our new folks during the interview process, but just as a refresher, I'm Lisa Knobloch. I'm the Sustainability Program Manager and the staff liaison to this board.
Awesome. Thanks. Francie.
Was that a request for an
Can you
introduction?
please introduce yourself?
Yeah. I'm Francie Jaffe. I am a sustainability coordinator for the city of Longmont. My position is kind of in the process of shifting, but once we have some new staff on, my position will focusing on internal sustainability work. But right now I do a lot of different things for the city.
Awesome. Thanks. Heather, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. My name is Heather McIntyre. I'm an executive assistant for the city of Longmont, and I get the privilege of being the recording secretary for this board. So
awesome. Are the other folks on the call then not presenting and therefore not going to introduce themselves organically?
You know, we have new people and the new people are going to be seeing these folks all the time. We might as well go through introductions.
I think that, and we got time. Becky.
Hi, I'm Becky Doyle. I will talk to you about storm drainage bonds later, but that's okay. I popped in. I'm the executive director of strategic integration. So strategic integration is work that we do to help all city services integrate sustainability, data and analytics, GIS kinds of initiatives throughout to make everyone more collaborative and sustainable. Yay.
Fantastic. Love it. Debbie, I see you there. Do you mind introducing yourself?
I would be glad to introduce myself. My name is Debbie Seidman. I am on city staff, so I am not an official member of the board. I'm here in a supporting role, and I work for Longmont Power and Communications, the city of Longmont. I work on energy efficiency programs, primarily benchmarking of energy use in buildings. My background is I'm an HVAC engineer with an emphasis in energy efficiency and a lot of high-tech building work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Hope.
Hello, everyone. I'm Hope Bartlett. I'm the water conservation specialist for the city of Longmont. Just here in a supporting role to see what you guys are all talking about today. I'll probably come in and out of your meetings occasionally whenever I have the opportunity to join as just an interested citizen and also a city employee.
Well, you're always welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Okay, David. David Brenna. Perhaps is not wanting to introduce himself. Daryl Hahn. Oh, David, there you are. I see you come up.
Daryl's coming on. David is, go ahead, David, you've got your microphone. Dave, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. So he's actually a member of the Senior Citizens Advisory Board, and he just has been coming to the Sustainability Board to find out, just listen into what you guys talk about. So
perfect. Thank you for that, Heather. Daryl.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. I'm Daryl Hahn. I'm the Interim Executive Director of LPC. Just here to listen, see what the pulse tells me, and I'm happy to listen and learn. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. Well, that looks like everyone on my screen. I think I just got a blackout on the bingo card. So let's move on. Thanks, everyone. Welcome, everyone who's here. Excited to have you here. Other business is the next item on the agenda, since we're skipping general business. Nothing on the agenda and not hearing anything from anyone. I'm going to go with the next item on the agenda, which is items from staff. So zero waste resolution update.
Yeah, so I just wanted to let folks know, if you remember, sorry, my face is large because my microphone is quiet, so I'm really close to my computer. If you can't hear me, let me know. The last meeting we came to, we reviewed the draft version of the zero waste resolution that we took to council June 28th, I believe, and had a great discussion with council and went through a lot of the components of that and findings from the data analysis that we did. We got feedback from council that they wanted us to bring back a revised version with some stronger language in it. And so we will be going back to council, which is currently scheduled for August 23rd, with essentially two different alternatives that they can review and give us direction on at that time. So just wanted to let you all know that we're not quite at the end of that process, but getting close to it. So we'll keep you in the loop on that. But I just wanted to give you all an update of where that project is at.
Great. Thank you for that update.
And now I might hand it to Francie, since I know she has to hop off pretty soon to talk about opportunities for volunteering at upcoming events.
Great, thank you. I first want to thank Charles, and Adam's not here, but they both volunteered at Rhythm on the River, which was a great event. We had about 42 people sign up to get our quarterly sustainability newsletter, and I think over 100 people engage in the activity we had over 2 days. We have more since it is the summer, so there's always events. There's 2 opportunities to volunteer at the end of August. They're actually back-to-back days, but different opportunities, and we can send this out over email as well. But Unity in the Community, which occurs in downtown Longmont, the Longmont Chamber hosts it. is from 5 to 9 p.m. on August 26th. We're still finalizing the details, but we'll most likely be splitting into an earlier and a later shift, as well as we might be recruiting volunteers to help with the zero waste stations. So wanted to get that on folks' radar if you're interested. If you know now you're interested, just feel free to raise your hand. I'll make a note of your name. We'll also send out something over email, and you can always kind of look at your calendar and get back to us as well. And then the other opportunity is the next day on Saturday, there's a household chemical drop-off event from 9 to 1. So this will be a 4-hour volunteer shift, and Charlie Camanitas needs help with volunteers to pass out and collect waivers, unload cars full with paints and chemicals, and lunch will be provided. So two volunteer opportunities, kind of very different volunteer opportunities, but wanted to get that on folks' radar, and we'll send out the information over email so you can respond if you're interested.
Great. Thanks so much.
Excuse me, I apologize, Francie, could you give us the dates again? I know it'll come in an email, but what were those dates?
August 26th, which is a Friday, for Unity in the Community. And then August 27th, which is the next day on Saturday, for the household chemical drop-off day.
Thank you.
Great. All right, we'll look for those emails. So our next topic is stormwater bonds. And Becky, I think that might be you.
Yes, hi. We just wanted to bring you an update that part of the city council agenda the upcoming Tuesday will be consideration of a resolution to place a stormwater bond issue on the ballot per city council's direction earlier this year. As a reminder, the city experienced a flood in 2013, which caused significant damage, around $55 million in documented damages by FEMA. And the city undertook the Resilient St. Vrain project beginning in 2014 to repair damage from that flood, and also to make sure that damages from future flooding risks were mitigated to the extent possible. Significant portions of that project have been completed, down from Sandstone Ranch all the way up through about Sunset Street, which was a bridge that was washed out in that flood event. And at this point, we are looking for funding to complete the final phase of that project from Sunset Street to Hover Street, and protect downstream areas from that flooding risk that was experienced in that time frame. So in 2014, when we talked about kind of what that whole project would look like and what the funding stack would look like, we spoke at that time about needing probably $40 million in bonds. And sure enough, so in 2014, we had a special election in the spring to issue, to gain authorization from the public to issue $20 million in bonds, which has served as a local match for federal funding for all of the completed portions of the project. At this point, that funding has been used, and funding is required to complete the project. We are looking at $20 million. It's possible that there are also federal funds that could be available in the form of grants. We continue to apply for additional grant funding that can be used for that, but without those grants in place, we do need that additional bond financing in order to continue the project. So that's the voters will be asked to provide that authorization this fall, and I think this is a general update, and we can take questions if you have them.
Thanks for that. Any questions? Yeah, Robert.
So what would be the expected duration to complete that work, and what is our current estimate of it? I guess I feel like the cost of construction has risen dramatically in the recent past, and I'm just curious how covered are we
Yes, absolutely. We do think that the $20 million includes significant contingency to complete the project. And the estimated completion is 2028 to have all that project work complete. So still a little ways.
I have a question. Could you just explain so I can understand the mechanics of the funding when you're requesting from the public? Will this come out of general city funds? Would there be a levy of some kind? How will the city tap that money if the public approves it?
Great question. So these are enterprise revenue bonds. So the storm drainage utility is an enterprise as defined under Tabor, the Taxpayers Bill of Rights. So it's a user fee funded, so utility. So you pay a rate on your utility bill each month. That is a user charge for the storm drainage utility. And the debt is fully paid with those rates, which are legislatively enacted by City Council. So the rates needed to support this bond issue have already been adopted. No additional rate increases would be required if this passes, but that rate schedule is already in place in our municipal code. There were some other questions in there. So in general, we issue bonds with a 20-year maturity. So over the next 20 years, we would use part of that user rate revenue to repay that debt.
Thank you very much.
And just to clarify, those bonds are then sold in the open market and generally bundled into municipal bonds. Is that correct? Which are then invested in by other large institutions like other cities.
Correct. Marcia. Sorry.
Yeah, Robert asked almost the question that I was going to ask, which is, is this additional money that's needed because of the increased costs of development, or is this, was this a second bond issue planned for all along, or something else?
So in 2014, when we initially brought the financial plan, we did think that we would need 40 million. So a 20 and a 20 is what we ended up going with. We had hoped when we were looking at this, 18 months ago, we thought we could get away with either not doing an additional, if we'd been successful in the additional grant financing, we wouldn't have had to do it at all, or a lower amount of potentially 10 or 15 million. Now with pricing the way that it is, 20 million seems like it's going to give us that cover to kind of ride out the market fluctuations in construction prices. But obviously there's also some interest rate volatility that we're keeping an eye on to make sure that we're getting the best prices and having the opportunity to the cost least to the utility over the 20-year life of the bond.
You thought I was going to ask a hard question, didn't you?
So an interesting fact about Longmont is that in other communities, Tabor enterprises do not have to put debt issuance on the ballot. They can just, do that because of their status as enterprise utilities. In Longmont, we have a charter requirement that says all debt issuances will be put to a vote of the public, which we think is great. It gives us the opportunity to speak with the public about our financing of projects and our overall sort of financial management of various utilities.
I've wondered about this. Probably nobody here can answer this. This is probably a question for Harold Dominguez, our city manager, or someone else who is involved with the ins and outs of the budget. But if we experience significant bond volatility, which, who knows what's going on in the market these days, if that occurs and these bonds significantly lose value, how would that affect the city's ability to act on them?
So an interesting thing about this is that once we have sold the bonds and received the cash from the investors, all of that market volatility is, risk that's borne by the investors. So we already have the cash in hand. So you know, we have that security of saying, you know, we know exactly what the amount is that we got out of that issuance.
But
Which is
in a
great.
time of issuance where there's volatility, doesn't
Oh,
it
yeah.
make it difficult to issue in the first place?
Yes, potentially. So what we know is the amount that's authorized by the public is a cap. But of the par amount of the bonds, like how much we borrow, where the volatility comes out is what is the amount of interest that we have to pay over time in order to meet the obligations that we entered into at the time of the sale. But luckily, once that's set, once the sale occurs and, you know, all the documents are signed, all of that is known and doesn't change again. It's, you know, it's really the volatility of the market between now and when the sale occurs that we need to monitor.
Has that ever been an issue in Longmont's history, that the market just didn't make it feasible to issue a bond at a point where it had been approved?
In my experience, so I've been doing this for about 10 years, and in, you know, historically advantageous markets, we'll say. So we have made potentially some different choices about financing vehicles, but I'm not aware that we have not moved forward with a bond sale due to market conditions. But it's definitely something that we are keeping an eye on at this point. And, you know, we have a municipal advisor who helps us understand those market conditions and make those decisions.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, will be a different line of questioning, I guess. You said that this will cover the area from Sunset to Hover. Are there county or other city repairs or modifications that are taking place kind of farther west on the St. Vrain drainage that we're linking up with or concerned about? Or is the city concerned about anything that happened higher up in the drainage that could still cause problems in the 2013 flood? Do you know?
That's a really interesting question, and I would probably have to refer you to our engineering folks to fully answer that. I do know that we were part of many of the county's repairs, including at Heron Lake and a couple of other locations, and that the change in, you know, the statutory floodplain has all been taken into account in the conceptual design. So I don't think so.
Great. Other questions for Becky? Okay.
Thanks for letting me talk about something potentially boring.
Thank you so much. It's very informative. Really appreciate it. Okay, so I've got next is items from the board. So I've got the questions for pollinators, and then I also want to address the future of our meetings. And if there are any other items from the board that you would like me to add, anybody have anything at this point? Okay, so Mary, you wanted us to put together some questions that we can ask the folks from the pollinators group that was supposed to present today. For me, Lisa, can you remind us, who are these folks? What is is this like a?
Actually, Kate, if I may.
Please.
I would like to have put together questions that we would like to interrogate the city with in general, not just an external community group that's coming in to speak about their actions as regards pollinators.
Okay, so your proposal is that we have questions for the city to answer. Is that what you broke up a little bit there? So I just wanted to make sure I got that.
I know every time I put my video on, I get that message about you know, efficient system resources or whatever it is. So yeah, I would like to put together the questions that we could put to the city staff. I don't see the benefit of having an external group come in and talk about their little tiny thing that they're doing for pollinators, or even if it's a big thing. I want to know what the city's comprehensive program, you know, programmatic sort of synthesis is for handling, you know, what is widely recognized as a global pollinator crisis, and which I know is a significant crisis because I belong to the bee groups, and you know, people are in it every day for years and years that I've been in the groups. So that was my suggestion.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Mary, that is who is coming, is city staff. And that is essentially what I had asked them to come and talk about, was kind of what's the state of pollinators? What is the city doing to support pollinators? And I know there's some state stuff happening as well. And I had asked them if they could speak about what are some other things happening more broadly, and how does what we're doing kind of fit in with that? They had also come back with saying there might be some benefit in having like a researcher involved in that conversation as well. Like I said, if that's happening in October, we would have some time if people are interested in that piece. But if the primary interest is on city staff, I can also take that back to them. But that was the primary plan, was for that to be a discussion with staff.
Okay. Yeah, I would especially like to have some questions to sort of hone in on the city's legislative agenda as regards this issue. I found the city does not take on many issues in its legislative agenda. I think the city relies a lot on, you know, the League of Cities and Towns, sort of what those agenda items are, you know, have been put forward, you know, for obvious reasons of, you know, mass action is more likely to result in something. But I don't know, I would like to get a picture for how we can maybe help the city to be more focused and up its game in some of these environmental issues. So the questions in that regard. So rather than talking about the questions that I want to ask, maybe we should list them.
It may be just me, but I couldn't hear hardly anything of what Mary said just now.
As I can't hear her either.
Okay, my system is up as far as it can go. I would like to work on the set of questions that involve understanding how the city sets legislative agenda, and if it, you know, for working on these things, for legislative advocacy with the Colorado legislature. I know that many of the city's legislative advocacy agendas are just sort of like jumping on the bandwagon with things that the League of Cities and Towns is doing. I think that's the right term, the right name of the group. And I just want to see if I want to know what's happening, and see if we can maybe craft something that's a little more robust than often happens in regards to environmental issues.
Okay. Ralph, I saw your hand up earlier. Was it just because you couldn't hear Mary, or?
No, I was just trying to understand as I'm getting a feel for what our committee does. But it could be Mary was addressing this. I couldn't hear all of it. How might, you know, our advisory committee be involved? Is she asking the committee to generate questions in regard to this, or how would our, you know, advisory board participate? I just wanted to understand that.
Yeah, that's a good question. And regarding the, you know, our role as a board, we are an advisory board, and we advise city council on matters related to sustainability. We don't have any I've lost the word, but we don't have a lot of clout as far as like forcing an agenda.
We're not a quasi-judicial board.
That's the one.
P and Z would be. We simply advise, and we spend a lot of time looking at reports that are created by city staff, and asking questions of the city staff as to how those reports were created, and sometimes we ask for revisions before those reports then go to city council. And we have at times asked that different boards and departments like PRPA, which we are a co-member of, which is our co-owner of. The city of Longmont is a co-owner of Platte River Power Authority. We have asked them to come and speak to us on specific issues like distributed energy resources and the path towards renewables. So that's just a little bit of an overboard, sort of an overboard overview. No, an overview of what it is that we do in this board.
Right, and my question was, I mean, I did do my homework and have a pretty good idea of what the role is of our committee. I just wondered in the specific topic that you were bringing up, what you were suggesting that the board would do. Was it to develop these particular questions you were talking about? I just wanted to understand how you vision the role of our group in this process.
I was thinking we could come up with some questions that would then go to city staff so that when we have the presentation, they have our questions in advance.
Thank you.
It sounds like some of the questions that you have might be questions for council, though, as around the legislative. Am I misunderstanding?
Well, so that's interesting. I don't know how much the legislative advocacy agendas are recommended by city staff to council. It seems to me that to some degree that is also generated by city staff.
Mm-hmm. Marcia, set us straight.
Yeah, I mean, I can describe that process. Sandy Cedar, Assistant City Manager, is also the legislative liaison. She sends to all of the staff departments certain issues that are coming before the legislature for the staff to recommend on. Some of the staff members, I know this happens in the water board fairly frequently, they do come to the advisory boards for discussion there. And then they turn around back to Sandy, and she in turn brings them to council, and the council decides whether actions like letters to our legislators are sent. So that's pretty much the process that we do. I don't know if we have ever gone ahead and recommended the drafting of a bill that is not being considered by the legislature. Some organizations do that. I don't think Longmont ever has.
Thanks.
And just to add a little bit to what Councilmember Martin was saying, we also are members of Colorado Communities for Climate Action, which this board did help recommend to council that we become members of that group, which is a statewide advocacy group that focuses more on like all things climate action on statewide legislative issues. And so when that process comes through that Marcia's talking about, I'm one of the staff liaisons that does that review. And I will also say these things are in alignment with, you know, where CC4CA's position is and that kind of stuff as well. So we are also members of other groups that do that statewide advocacy. And, you know, part of our job is to make sure that those groups that we're aligned with are supportive of the council policy priorities and that kind of stuff. So that's part of that process, but we are also members of that group as well that does that work essentially on our behalf.
Great, thank you. So, Mary, do you want to kind of take the next few minutes and lead us through some of the questions that you're hoping to get and see if that spurs anything for any of the rest of us?
Okay, so I'm as always very interested to understand the city's comprehensive approach to forever chemicals. Neonics, the perfluoroalkyls, glyphosate apparently is considered by some to be a forever chemical. These are all very, very much involved in the pollinator vulnerability and pollinator health. issues. And, it's one thing to reduce your use of these chemicals in, the city parks and along public roadways. It's another thing to, engage in a robust program of testing of the biosolids that are left over from the sewage treatment, and making sure that those forever chemicals aren't being sort of just shipped, in a NIMBY-like fashion to somebody else's backyard, or being emitted into waterways as a downstream problem for our downstream neighbors. So I would like to know how the city, and also, leach it from landfills of forever chemicals. And I'm also interested to know the city's policies in terms of the farmlands that the city has responsibility for and that leases. So that's sort of my, and if the city doesn't have plans, it just sort of like lets things go out of its hands and doesn't consider it, I would like to, in certain instances, like with the biosolids, I would like to know that answer as well, simply so that we know what are truly ecological in terms of whole system responsibility, conception of responsibility is within the city.
Great. Thank you. The others have questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a couple things that when this Mary's brought this issue up a couple times, and I've in my head thought about things that related to pollinators that I just don't know about how the city treats it, that I think would be really interesting to kind of learn. One of them is the distinction that we make between honeybees, which are not native and an agricultural product, and native pollinators, which are, there's what, 900 some odd bee species in Colorado, something like that. I don't know how many of them live in our area.
Biodiversities in the world, yeah.
Yeah, or how many of them. So to me, I think those issues sometimes get muddled between something that is basically an agricultural product, as much as I like it, and something that is part of a natural biosystem. And the other thing that I'm just curious about is I feel sometimes that there's a lot of potential synergy with some of the other things we talk about in this group, and some of the other plans of the sustainability plan that Longmont has. Things about traffic calming and walkable cities, and all of these things are going to involve us rethinking a lot of kind of land use, and whether or not those can also be opportunities for, I mean, not just native pollinators, but other native things. I know that urban wildlife isn't really, that's not how we're going to save wildlife, but I am curious whether or not when we think about how we're going to redo some of our streets or other areas within the city, what are the actual things that go into deciding how best to appropriate different parcels of land? And I don't know the answer to that, obviously, and so that would be something that it'd be interesting to know what that decision-making process is.
Yeah, Marcia.
Yeah, I would say the one about whether we put any restrictions on our agricultural leases is one that I had not thought about and have not discussed with David Bell. So that one definitely should make the list. A thing that I know David does think about, that he and I have had discussions about before, is application methods that are used to minimize impact. And I know he does a lot of things along those lines, and he would enjoy talking about it. So, I'm not going to steal his thunder, but that's an area that matters. And then finally, there is the general focus of local control, which is the legislative agenda, because there are things that happen in the city that we are not allowed to control because the state preempts us from doing it. So, and of course that does affect our legislative agenda, and we have been supporting legislative initiatives that tend to go in that direction, but they haven't gotten there yet. So I think those are both good things for the list.
Yeah, it would be good to have the, whoever comes to speak to us to recap the recent history with the legislature of attempting to lift the local, the preemption of local control around some pesticides, and the recent pollinator bill that was put forth by the PPAN, People and Pollinators Action Network, and another coalition that got gutted, and instead we got another kicking the can down the road decision to study. There's a lot of research that's telling us what's exactly happening here. So at least it's still, I guess I could be a Pollyanna and say at least it's still on, in front of the legislatures for another session, even if it's in an ineffectual form.
Yeah, the ag lobbies are very powerful, so it's really hard to get changes made.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. Others? Questions, thoughts for this list?
I'm concerned about the dearth of studies. If there's one area that really needs to have money poured into it, demonstrating how much of the dramatic reduction of insects in general, in the 75% reduction in insects that happened in the period in which we were sort of densifying the planet with cell towers. I would like to have more understanding of what that actual effect is locally. I know that the FCC and other regulatory bodies tend to be captured by industry and they don't want these effects studied, but when you look at the individual smaller studies, which would comprise part of a literature review for recommending funding of a study, a larger study of these effects on pollinators, there are very concerning effects on the physiological cellular level. For example, on the effects of mitochondrial efficiency and efficacy in honeybees and other pollinators. And I would really like to, and I know that this is something we're all, in love with our cell phones and we can't live without them, but if this is a significant effect in the environment, I think it's something that we need to be honest and face up to.
Thank you. Others? I think we have a pretty good list here. So thanks everyone for all of your thoughts. And I took some notes. I'm hoping, Heather, that you have some notes as well, because I'm sure I didn't get everything, but maybe we can compare notes later. And
yeah,
work
Kate, if you can email me and Heather what you have, then we can compare and I can make sure staff have that list of questions ahead of time.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. That sounds good. Okay, can we talk about the future of this meeting? And we have talked a few times about a couple of things. One, switching the time, and one, whether or not we want to meet in person. I think that we had gotten to the point of everyone was in agreement that once we had our board transition, that we would start meeting later in the day. Does that ring true for others?
I do remember that we agreed to that, yes, so that the public who work 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 can sneak in after. We probably have to provide donuts, but just kidding, I don't eat donuts.
Yeah. Okay, so what time feels like a reasonable time? Is 5:30 a good time for us to all meet? Is 6 o'clock better? Have we discussed this already and made a decision? Jim? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ralph.
I just wanted to ask, I'm sure it varies depending on the intensity of what the agenda is, but in discussing the time, what's the general length of meetings? I mean, this was blocked out for, I think, I don't know how many hours, 2 or 3 hours, but what's the typical time of most meetings? About 2 hours?
Roughly, we work hard to keep it in 2 hours. Sometimes we go a little over, and I bear the responsibility by not keeping us on track, but I try hard to keep us on track and get us done within 2 hours.
We did used to have hour-and-a-half meetings, and it wasn't too long ago we expanded them to 2 hours because we did frequently run up against the end. So, but I think we're pretty good about keeping it within that 2 hours now. Yeah.
I would say about a third of our meetings end 10 or 15 minutes early.
And you're exactly right. It does depend on what's on the agenda and how engaged everybody is. Jim.
In terms of time, anything later than this is easier for me. So whatever other people would work into their schedules, this has always been an awkward time for me. So the later, I mean, I don't want to be up at midnight, but the later the better on my end. But other than that, I won't object to anything as long as it doesn't go earlier.
Also keeping in mind that this is work for city staff, and working late it can be difficult, and I don't want to have us extend too late into the evening, although everyone has graciously said that they are willing to stay. I think that 6 is about the latest I would like to start these. Are there opposing views there? Anyone feel passionate about 5:30?
I have another meeting at 7, but it's one that I can skip from time to time, so.
Okay.
I'm just concerned that yet again, we have had no input from the public that might actually be at these meetings if they are at a different time. I feel like we're sort of in it was sort of like a solipsistic inquiry where we can't ask the members of the public who can't be here at this time if they want to be here at another time because we're meeting at this time.
Will you please repeat what kind of inquiry you were just saying?
Solipsistic.
All right, I'm looking that one up. Thanks.
Well, self-referential. I mean, we can't ask the public who are here if they want to meet at another time if they can't be here because of the time.
Okay. Yeah, no, yeah, that does make sense. And I think that there's a point at which we're going to have to accept that we can't pull people who aren't here and make a choice. I think that, well, Marcia, if you have to leave at 7 sometimes, probably 5:30 is a better time for you to leave to ensure that we get through at least most of the agenda.
Yeah, I would very seldom leave an important item for that other meeting. So, don't do it for me. On the other hand, 5:30 would be my choice. So.
Okay. Francie, Lisa, do y'all have a preference? Would you rather an hour between 5 and 6 to grab something to eat, or would you rather just get it over with early?
I appreciate your consideration. That is very generous. It is part of our job, and so we will accommodate whatever works for folks. My personal preference, because I have small children, is to power through and be done so I can get home for bedtime. But it's also okay if that doesn't work for folks. But thank you.
I'd like to venture out on a limb and ask if we could do a hybrid time which would overlap with city staff, but then go into the evening a little bit. Like, what if we went from 4:30 to, I guess we do 2 hours, 6:30, and we did the public invited to be heard after hours, so that if there were public that were working 9 to 5, they could come and speak, between 5:30 and 6:30 or something, and city staff wouldn't have to be here until 7. I don't know. It just seems to me like maybe if we wanted to accommodate the public and accommodate city staff, we could make a modification in that direction.
I mean, one alternate, like one of the things that I think has really, when we've been meeting virtually, we've gotten a lot more public invited to be heard coming and speaking with us. I don't know if there's a way to actually make it so that people can either record their questions, because I mean, we don't actually answer them directly anyways. People come on, they have 3 minutes and they say what they want to say. If there's a way to do it kind of asynchronously, because all of our meetings are recorded, so they could actually maybe we could explore something that would actually make it so that even if we ever do return to in person, that we could still kind of keep the best one of the best like positives of the Zooming.
But being a small group and kind of informal, we do actually respond to the public invited to be heard a fair amount of the time. I've found that some of that conversation's been very interesting.
I think we do, but I guess my point is that usually they have 3 minutes to speak and then we can talk about things necessarily, but there isn't necessarily a back and forth. And so if there are people who can't make the meeting for whatever reason, it might be another mechanism that would allow people to have their voice heard, to have it officially on our record, but wouldn't require us to go very late, which might make it so that people who have small kids can't comment on things, or who work the swing shift or something like that. So.
It's a really interesting idea.
Questions to Heather and Heather reads them for them. Hasn't that happened in the past?
Heather, can you weigh in on that idea and whether or not?
So I think we would have to check into the legalities of that. I'm not sure what the law is around that possibility. We do have the option when people have questions, for example, even today, information that Doe Kelly requested to be passed along to you all, we just pass it along to you through email. So if they have comments or questions or something, we are also able to do it that way. But I don't know what the law is as far as public invited to be heard piece of it.
It's a really interesting idea. Marcia.
I'm sorry, I was trying to make sure that my fan was doing its best job, so I wasn't raising my hand. It's hot.
It was a very dramatic.
Yes.
Totally. I was gonna go for it. Okay, so I think that the idea, I really like the idea of offering people a secondary way how to submit questions or comments. I think it's worth looking into on the legal side and seeing if there's an alternative that we can offer folks. As far as the time of day, I think that I'm trying to think through like the idea of having the public invited to be heard section after the general business. So that's kind of how that would work then, Mary, in shifting the agenda. That as long as the general business took that first half hour, which it probably would, then that should leave, that should get us to public invited to be heard after 5.
If we started at 4:30.
Yeah, if we started at 4:30, sorry. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, Lisa.
I don't foresee this being an issue because we haven't had a tremendous number of people show up for public invited to be heard. I would say the only caution to that is just like at a city council meeting, if a lot of people do show up, then you are then committed, I think, to staying, if that pushes the meeting later, whereas if it is earlier in the meeting, you can adjust the agenda if need be. Like I said, I don't think that's an issue, just as a consideration to put out there of how that might impact the overall meeting time.
It's a good point. Thanks for raising that.
Well, if it happens once and we're here till 9 o'clock, we can change the meeting time.
Please don't let that happen. Other folks, are there opinions?
I would note that PRPA limits the total duration of public invited to be heard. So that's not outside, that's not outside the boundaries. We could say its total limit is 45 minutes or something like that.
Right.
See,
Good question.
Yes.
Councils do that and they just say, we only have 45 minutes and there's 20 people, so everyone gets 2 minutes rather than 3 tonight. I don't love that, but if we had to, that may be legal.
Yeah, it's legal.
Is it the case? I have a two-part. Let me ask the first part of the question and then I'll address the time. Is it the case that generally when someone from the public comes, they make their presentation of whatever the topic is, and then it's taken under advisement and it's not discussed there at that particular time while the person is there? Is that generally the case?
Yes, it kind of depends. There are times when we have had a little bit of back and forth on the topic, but there's no real requirement to. It's kind of at the prerogative of the board.
Okay, because that certainly speaks to whether or not it could be done where they make a recording or whatever. If normally there wouldn't be a whole lot of discussion, but if there sometimes is, then we have to give that some consideration. The other thing is, I mean, this may be in left field, but do we discriminate against people if we make it later that have evening jobs?
Right.
So I'm not sure there's a perfect solution other than doing our best to accommodate on a case-by-case basis, rather than setting a time that may inconvenience half the advisory board for the other half, in the anticipation that once every 2 months, somebody can't make a particular time, that, it may make more sense to work out what's best for the committee and then do our best to accommodate people when that comes up. These are just random thoughts. I don't know whether they're constructive or not, but just some things to consider.
No, really appreciate these thoughts. Thank you. We've had a concern, kind of a general concern around a lack of public showing up to this meeting at this time, and the hope is that if we move it back, it gives folks who do work the 9 to 5 type of jobs to attend and be engaged in these meetings. I think that you're right. We're not gonna have a perfect solution that works for everybody, and that striving for that is just it's a folly exercise. But I do think that it is convenient for the many members of the board to meet at a later time than we are currently, and that might also, the hope is that if we shift to a later time, that would potentially open up some more, bring in some more of the public to participate in these meetings.
If it's the case that, first of all, for me, I own my company, so I can set my time. So let me just be on record that whatever works the majority, I can accommodate that. And then the second thing is that if it both meets the preferences of the board, and it also opens the opportunity for more people to be able to be present from the public, then making it a little bit later, it seems like the weight shifts in that direction a little bit.
I think so. Yeah.
I know the staff loves it when I suggest that you do something extra like a survey, but is there any way when people sign up for public invited to be heard, if they could be sent a quick question afterwards saying, hey, was your availability to be here limited by your, in the past, or are you only, did you not come speak in the past because, you were working 9 to 5 or so forth? I mean, is there any way we can query the folks who show up to sort of get a sense of impact?
I'm not sure who that would fall to and whether or not that's.
Well, it would be, Heather's the person that schedules people, so, she'd have to say, hey, I have no idea how this would work in terms of legality, but if all of a sudden we have a bunch of people showing up, as somebody who's, been involved in marketing and market research, I would sure as heck want to know why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep, Robert.
I don't mean this to sound like a pessimistic question, but we have many boards and committees throughout the city of Longmont that meet at various times of day and days of the week. Do we have any data about the impact of participation in those meetings that can help us like think about this more critically because my hypothesis is the time of day is not likely to dramatically change participation, but I don't know if we have data that says otherwise.
Yeah, Marcia.
Honestly, the boards that are well attended, it really is more related to how much clout that the board has. So planning and zoning always has speakers. But we do get some feedback from senior advisory, which meets in the middle of the day, that it's hard for the public to attend. On the other hand, it's hard for seniors to do things that happen late at night. So.
Right. Right.
I can ask around as well. That's a great question, Robert. I don't know that we have that data. I think that it as Marcia said, it depends on the board and what topics they cover and how engaged the community is on those particular topics too. So I think that there's probably different factors that influence that, but we can, I think, at least do some polling of staff liaisons and just get a sense of how frequently and how well attended the public invited to be heard section of their meetings are.
And especially if there are boards that have changed their time and seen a difference, that would be like
Good data point.
that would help. Yeah, that would help normalize it. That'd be great.
So can I make a motion that we change the time to the straddle time that we had discussed and try having public invited to be heard after general business? Is that too many things to propose in one motion?
Yeah, you could do that if you wanted to.
Okay, motion made.
Open to discussion on that. Any thoughts?
We need a second first.
Oh,
Can we define what's the straddle time?
Did we agree it was
4:30
to 6:30?
4:30 to 6:30, and then changing the agenda so that public invited to be heard happens after general business.
I'll second that motion.
Yeah.
Discussion there. Any thoughts on that?
I don't know, Charles, are your cats going to be able to make it? Haven't seen them today.
Well, if it's a later, I might be more likely to be home, and that's where my cat is. So yes. So I mean, I think it's a move in the direction of I think later is more convenient for several of us, but not so late that it impacts like Marcia's attendance to get to her 7 o'clock meeting and things like that. So yeah, and I like the public to be heard later. And the one thing, so I know this is not part of the motion, but I'm not a big fan of hybrid meetings, running too many hybrid meetings as part of work and how challenging that is to get engagement, and just so super inefficient to run a meeting that way. So, but definitely I like the idea of moving an hour later, and the public to be heard part. It's like, yeah, it'd be an interesting experiment to see how that works. We could always change later. It's moving an agenda item around isn't the hardest thing to do.
So just to continue discussion so we can then vote. I meant hybrid time, sort of like half workday, half, or part workday, part later. Not hybrid in terms of in-person and online. I think everybody hates those. And we can probably have a vote on that.
A unanimous vote.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Another quick question.
Yes.
Number one, who fields requests to appear before the committee? Who is that person? And Heather. Okay. Because I'd be curious to know what her experience is with this. And then secondly, what methods do we have in terms of outreach to encourage people to educate people, make them aware of what we do, so that people who have interest in the community know, hey, we need to go and talk to those folks. Is there such a program?
That's
Well,
a
There are a
great.
bunch of newsletters, but we have never asked them to do anything on our behalf, have we?
No, and that's a really good point. So just to answer that question though, we do have our meeting hours are posted in a couple of places. I think the library and a city building. Is that right?
Yeah, so the agenda is posted at the Civic Center as well as here at the Service Center. And then it's also online, which is the main way for people to get it now, on the city's agenda portal for all of the committees and city council meetings.
But as far as proactive outreach to the community, we don't do, is there anything in the newsletter that says, hey, we've got a board meeting, you're invited to be heard if you want to?
I don't know the answer to that. That would be Lisa.
Well, there's the city has a couple different general newsletters. I think at least one of those comes in email, but then there's also a sustainability newsletter from the city, right?
Yeah, and we haven't put that in there before. We definitely can add that. That's easy for it. It's quarterly, so it's not going to be every month, but we can definitely, plug that for folks. Yeah.
I know just from my friends who are pretty aware people that any get together or dinner, people are discussing issues that are the same issues that we're discussing. And yet when I told them I was getting involved in this committee, none of them had ever even heard of that. And one of them is actually the policy advisor to the mayor of the city of Boulder. Another one was the head of a nonprofit for solar businesses in Colorado. And so again, I'm a newbie and I don't want to step over the line here, but I'm just sort of thinking, while I'm still a little bit of an outsider to this process, that we want to look for opportunities to engage our community more so that we can be more effective in being a voice for them. And I don't know. I do go to the library. Well, I rarely go to the library. I may not be in a city building. I don't recall getting any particular notices. I've been here 3 years. Really, if I wasn't interested in being involved in the community, I wouldn't even know about the Sustainability Advisory Board to even bring up issues or what that committee, that group does. That might be a place for something that I'm interested in. I might want to engage. So, you guys maybe have been through all this before, but I'm just, these are just thoughts that are coming to mind for me.
I really appreciate you bringing them up, and it's a great idea to have some more proactive outreach. And yep, Mary.
Can we have a vote on the first question, and then Ralph, do you want to get your feet wet with making a proposal that we ask the city to put a notice in as the next?
I'm not sure if that's going to require a vote.
All right.
Yeah, I apologize for digressing here. So I don't know that other than just putting this on the table for us to cogitate on. I'm satisfied and happy to get out of the way and get our business done.
Okay.
Francie already added a note to our next newsletter to put it in there. So
thanks. Done. All right. Thank you. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and vote on the motion that's on the table. To change our meeting time to 4:30 to 6:30 and revise our agenda to move public invited to be heard to after general business. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that was unanimous. Thank you. And as far as meeting online, remind me, did we decide to continue meeting online for the time being?
So it's been tabled a couple of times because we haven't had enough people at the meetings to do it.
Okay.
So if we want to make that decision here, that would be good. I know at one point in time, a concern had been brought up about allowing public to come on video. I did check with the city manager's office and city clerk's office, and our policy is still that for equal access for everybody, only audio is allowed.
Okay. Thank you, Heather. Mary, I see your hand.
I would still like to see some data as to whether the public prefers online meetings or in-person meetings, and we still have 0 data points to this effect. So let's throw that into the pile of things that we want to learn about the public's volition and interests vis-a-vis meetings like this.
Okay, I'm not. How would you like to get that data?
I don't know. I want to know if the city has been asking this question and how they've been asking it, and what information has come.
Okay. Jim, is this? Go for it, Jim.
Yeah, in terms of meeting in person, I mean, cases are going up in Colorado again with an incredibly bad variant. And I think that unnecessarily putting people together in a small room just doesn't make any sense. I would favor staying online until we actually see a consistent reduction where caseloads stay low, and they stay low for a while, and we can all feel comfortable doing it. I mean, I think, I don't know how many years I did where we were meeting in person, but I do feel that the online has dramatically increased the amount of public invited to be heard that we're seeing. And I know we changed time a little bit, and I think I'm the second longest serving person on this board after Kate. But I just, to me, with the way that cases are going and the rate of infection is going, I just don't see bringing a bunch of people together in a small room as being a thing that we should be aiming for.
Took the words right out of my mouth there, Jim. Anyone feel passionately about meeting in person? Okay. I think that at this point, I appreciate your desire to get information about the public's preferences, and for the time, like, we're still in a global pandemic, and for, I think, I would almost say to the end of the year, at least, to keep the online format feels safest, just from a public health standpoint. In the meantime, though, I think it would be interesting to know, is there any kind of information about preference from the public on how we meet? Marcia.
It's not statistically significant. However, when the council was meeting online, there was a lot of controversy about the difficulty of participating by the public. Now, obviously, we have, public participation for council is much higher than for any other boards and commissions. And it still isn't that high. We had 18 people for the open forum, which is the biggest attendance that, you typically have. So, the one answer to Mary's question is, it's just not practical to gather data for such a small increment one way or the other. If we were meeting in person, then it would be a different matter to consider public participation. But since we have made the decision, which I agree with, even though I don't have a vote, to stay online, I think that there really isn't any, there aren't any viable options and no data to drive it.
Well, it all depends on how we construct the study, right, Marcia? I mean, if we actually wanted to know, we'd have to reach out further than the few people who actually do show up. As I mentioned.
Mary, one thing you could do is volunteer to construct a survey. There are free vehicles.
Sure. I mean, I construct them all the time. How would the city distribute it, however? So yeah, we can talk about that.
All right. I do think that we need to vote on the format, at least for the time being. So I would like to make a motion that we continue an online format through 2022.
I would second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Okay, none opposed. All right. I think we've got that. And
Did
um
Marcia's cat vote?
yeah,
He doesn't get a vote either.
can you introduce him?
This is actually my daughter's cat. His name is Fritz and he's 18 years old.
Oh, he's a sweetheart.
So he's
Oh.
old enough to vote.
He definitely is old enough to vote. The next item on the agenda is
Wait a minute, is he the
oh, sorry.
public invited to be purred?
Pardon me?
Is he the public invited to be purred?
No, he doesn't want to be heard.
Or purred.
He wants to be, yeah, there he is. He's the public invited to be purred. It's hard to get a purr out of him these days.
Oh,
I think it's very interesting. My wife is on the board of the Longmont Friends of Feral Cats, and we have 2 kitties. And because they eat around 4:30, I closed my door so you wouldn't hearing them meowing at my feet, which is what usually happens. So now that I know we have cat lovers, next time I'll let them come and join us.
oh
Well,
yeah.
now that I know there's a feral cat lover, I'm going to have cats for you. So I'm going to be coming for you next time we have a litter
I
of
had to throw
ferals
my-
that we were
I
trying
had
to
throw my
find
cat out for the same reason, Ralph.
homes for.
Well, great. We have good resources for that. Love to help.
Many feline honorary members of this board. Okay, next item is items from council. Marcia, do you have anything for us?
Well, because the zero waste is coming back around to be presented to council, I would like to repeat the instruction, the feedback from council, which is let's nail some of this stuff down. So make the recommendations more specific and get some data-based analysis for maybe some thresholds such as what are we going to do? Are we going to measure, for example, the carbon cost of diverting waste as opposed to just the carbon cost of putting it in the landfill and calling it good? Some more quantification is what the council is looking for. And Lisa, that's what I remember. Do you remember any other instruction besides that?
The other piece that we had takeaways for was the stronger language and potentially more aggressive targets.
Mhm.
So yeah, those are the other pieces.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Thank you. And just to clarify, is that going to come back? That's going to come back before us to? No.
Nope, that'll just at least where it stands right now. It'll just go back to council. It's just really those 2 versions with stronger language and more aggressive targets. And then I'll come back to you all and let you know what the outcome of that was. Our next 2 meetings are pretty packed on the agenda. So yeah, we won't probably have too much time to dig into it, but the next piece of that, should we continue to get direction from council to pursue it, is the universal recycling ordinance, and that will bring drafts back to you all on that piece.
Great. Okay, thanks for clarifying. Appreciate it. Okay. Just a note there that attached to the board packet, there was the informational items, it's emails back and forth. Those are for your information, but please do read through them. And that brings us to the end of our agenda. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
I
There's
second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
All right. Thanks, everyone. Great meeting.
Yeah.
thanks.
Appreciate you being here.
Bye.
Nice
Thanks,
to meet
everyone.
everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.